Welcome to another episode of the Whole Human Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Sorgenfrey, and today I have Zohare Haider with me, who is the co-founder and CEO of Jalebi. Zohare is based in Dubai today. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you, Peter. It's great to speak with you.
So there might be a few of our listeners or the people who see this that don't know who you are. So could you introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to?
I would expect most won't know. I'm not that famous, but I'd be happy to introduce myself. My name is Zohare. I am a 44-year-old tech entrepreneur. I'm based in Dubai. I've been here for about 13 years. Been in the Middle East for about 14 years. I started in Qatar. Originally from Pakistan. I was born there. I was pretty much raised there, educated in the United States, and been a worker and a money earner for maybe 20 plus years now. And I think the gray hair maybe substantiates that. I'm building a company which we'll probably talk a little bit more about a little later, but it's basically a SaaS company working in the F&B industry, trying to help F&B businesses like restaurants and cloud kitchens and catering companies to improve their supply chain and their food costs by understanding their raw material and inventory consumption across the whole operation. I built a couple of other companies before this, and I've had an exciting career.
And you're also an investor, right? You're an angel investor in a couple of companies.
I am, yes. I've invested in a few companies, some tech companies, some traditional companies as well. Like to kind of, it's like, let's not make a thing out of it. They're small checks, but I think, really the idea of diversifying your own money, but also putting conviction where you're looking for it yourself. I think it's kind of one of those things where I believe that if you do something in the universe, will find a way to give it back to you as well.
That's actually an interesting framing that I haven't thought of. So I've built 6 companies, right? Over the last 20 years or so. And of course, I was looking for money a lot. And so having that empathy for somebody else now building a company. And so my impression is some of our colleagues that are co-founders and founders of companies, they don't really consider themselves traditional angel investors, but they
Yeah.
look at themselves as people trying to support others who are pursuing a dream, just like
Yeah.
they sought out the support of somebody before them, right? So maybe that's a way to think about it. So what
Yeah.
cost you what cost you to start Jalebi? Where did the idea come from?
Oh, I guess it's never really a straightforward journey, extremely non-linear. So the genesis was basically a small workshop between myself and my co-founder and a few other people. It was June or maybe May 28th of 2020. My co-founder and I had met under the pretext of my first company, which I'd started 15 years prior to that moment. And I was trying to reinvent it, bring it to the Middle East somehow. And I wanted a co-founder, so I met with him. COVID, basically, the time that my co-founder and I had spent working together and kind of building a relationship. It had only been a few months that we'd met, maybe 9 months. And COVID just kind of threw it out the window. It's like, you're not going to build anything together. Okay? Not this company, at least. And I needed to go to bed. My wife is very happy that it died, by the way. Just don't tell her that. So we'd resolved that the two of us wanted to continue working together, and we wanted to stay in the F&B space. That's a space that we're both very passionate about. We have experience working there in some way, shape, or form. And we wanted to take our learnings from the past experiences, but try and avoid the big pitfalls. Like, for example, we did not want to do a B2C play. We want to do a B2B, and it had to be a SaaS play. And it had to be something that was solving a large and unique enough problem that nobody cared about, as in from a technology competitor point of view, but was a very deep and searing pain that the customer or the end, beneficiary. So we didn't really arrive at a kind of, this is what we're going to build. We just came up with a framework. We said SaaS, B2B, and product, not service. And we went on a journey of about 18 months to kind of, let's say, learn about the value chain of F&B, really try and dissect it by process of elimination, start where most of the usual suspects do, which is very far out on the demand side, and try and see, okay, how do we help the business generate more revenue, right? That's what we were thinking about, because that's what most people do, is like, that's what businesses will adopt. And we had a few business models. We tried one, we failed it. We tried another, we failed it. We went from, organizing the aggregators, the delivery aggregators, to building a QR pay at table solution, which became very popular about a couple of years ago. And these are very early on, right? When we arrived at what Jalebi is today, that was about 18 months into this process. And this was great because we had spoken to maybe 500-600 customers, and many people had kind of validated or invalidated our thought process. So I really like to believe that the customer discovery process led us to where we are today. And
Mhm.
it's not like we're a roaring success, but we've got our accolades and successes that we're happy about. But what really kind of led us to start this company was a pure and, I guess, earnest desire to solve a very deep and, let's say, largely ignored problem in F&B.
I'm going to allow myself to summarize what you just said because it is you did it brilliantly,
Oh, thank
and
you.
it is something that a lot of certainly first time founders or people coming into companies don't do, and therefore they end up
Token.
struggling, right? They jump straight into the pool instead of kind of thinking about, should I be in this pool? And
Yeah.
so my simple summary of what you said was, we knew what industry we would be in, F&B. We knew which customer in that industry we would target, the B2B player, so the purveyor of the F&B. We knew it was going to be a SaaS company. We knew we were not going to be suppliers of coconuts, right?
Yeah.
We knew we were
Yeah.
going to do a technology company that was a software as a service business. And then, and here's the kicker, then we spent 18 months studying deeply the value chain to kind of figure out where was there a problem that was big enough, a pain that
Mhm.
was big enough for the customer that nobody else cared about. And I
Can I
think
take you to
that,
my investors right now?
well,
I mean,
but I
eloquent.
just, you sent it, we're going to send this episode to your investors because
Yeah.
that's it, right? You really
Yeah.
try to understand where's the biggest pain, and then you started setting out and saying, okay, can we solve this with a SaaS and
Yeah.
convince the B2B guys to buy it?
Yeah.
We think we can. And then you started building stuff. Then you started
That's it.
talking about it. Then you started figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
So I think the lesson here, that the lesson number one of this podcast, and we're 7 minutes deep, so this is really nice stuff, is spend more time understanding if the problem that you think you're going to solve is a big enough and
Yeah.
valuable enough for your customer. And that doesn't mean asking a couple of friends and asking a VC or asking your mom. It means going into the market, really understanding the dynamics, really understanding also the competitive landscape. I'm not saying you shouldn't do something if there's competitors, because that just means that what you're doing could be validated
Hmm.
already.
Yeah.
But please do that work. And Zohare just gave us the framework. What industry, what type of customer industry, what kind of delivery mechanism, SaaS, how do we find the problem and the pain? Those are the four things that we need to do first, and then we get started.
And if I can just kind of, sweeten that a little bit, there's this urgency to sort of establish a commercial proposition and a price point very early so that you can prove revenue and traction. And I think there's this, I guess, confusion about what's more important. Do I set a price point that people will pay, or do I validate that there is a price that makes sense for what people believe is a valuable enough problem that they're willing to put money towards? Because if you're in this cat and mouse game of, is the problem big enough that they can put a value on it, and then we could take a share of that value and make that our revenue? Or do we go and say, hey, listen, this is the product, these are the 10 features, and this is the price we're going to charge, take it or leave it?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes a challenge. We actually started off like just throwing it away for free. We're like, just get people to use it, just punch buttons, doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
And
And
and and, and
today, in
but it
fact, we
always has,
signed our, sorry, today, I was just going to say, today is actually significant because we literally just signed our highest value customers to date today.
congratulations. If there was a button
Thank
in this recording app where I could do like fireworks, I would, but
you.
I don't think there is. And balloons. But there was another
Yeah.
thing you said, Sir Hare. Yeah, exactly. Let's try and
Yeah.
see if Apple picks it up, right? You said something else which I think is quite significant. Again, we all know this, but not a lot of people do it. There it was. There comes
Well,
the thumbs up.
actually, this is the one. Yeah. There we
Oh,
go.
there it is. Balloons. Fantastic.
Anyway,
Which is, you set out to find something that could either, no, well, actually, you said set out to find something that could generate more revenue for our customers.
yes.
And that's the other kind of equation that's missing. How does what we do either help our customers save money or
Yes.
make more money?
Yeah.
There's no in between. I mean, if you can
No.
do both, brilliant. But you have to do one of the two.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, many of the founders that I come across, certainly the ones that are on their first business or even their second business, are too enamored with the technology. Right now it's AI, right? Everybody says, oh, well, is it actually solving a problem that a customer has that's big enough that they want to pay you money to do it? And have you proven that it's going to save them money or make them money? If you don't have clear answers to those, no wonder you're going to be rejected by investors and potential customers, right? So remembering to identify the ways you're either going to reduce cost or increase revenues for your customers is paramount.
100%.
So you said we're not there yet, and obviously by no means we're not perfect. You've been going for 3 years and some months at this recording, like 3 years and 8 months or so. What were some of the key successes along the way? What were some of the points where you're like, yeah, we got it. We figured something out that's important.
I think the first, and it's not like when it happens, you realize it, but I'd say the first one was the right co-founder. I think that's a very critical part because it's like a marriage. Many people talk about it, but don't really appreciate how similar they are. Getting into a relationship with someone on a shareholder and a cap table is not different from a marriage certificate. But then you also have the validation along the way. You'll have tremendous amounts of rejection. I think another success for us is the scars that we've acquired over the years without steering off and losing conviction. It's not measured in the same way, but I think a way of culminating that would be the time that somebody said yes to us the first time. The first one would be maybe there was this startup platform in UAE from Sharjah, which is a city. But I think the big one was Techstars. When Techstars originally invested in us back in 2021, and at that time, we hadn't actually arrived at the final conclusion of what our product is going to be. At that point, it was just, okay, great founding team, doggedness, really focused on a problem. And it seems like they're going after an old problem, not like creating a new one. It's not like AI this and ML that, but this is like, let's go back 30 years. Another three really important, I think, milestones would be we were recognized at the end of last year by the Ministry of Economy of the UAE as one of the future 100 companies. In fact, the award is sitting right behind me. That was really important because that's the federal government of the United Arab Emirates basically telling us, you are one of the 100 companies that actually align with the economic agenda of our country as a startup or an SME. And that kind of, being on that kind of a podium where you're going and shaking hands with ministers of state and being recognized for whatever you've achieved, whatever you've done, you've basically, gotten to a point. And I think the last one would be really sort of kind of being able to go back home and still feeling as excited about what you're doing. After all this time, it's very easy to like kind of get bored or lose interest. Every day I come back with more vigor. And I think that really kind of comes from two things. One is that every day you're unearthing a little bit more that continues to demonstrate to you how much more you still have to learn about the problem because it's just so damn big. And then the other part is like your home life, right? Like I think for me, my wife and I, we've been together now 17 years next month, actually 19 years, engaged for 2 years. And, we were co-founders together. We have recently had a kid 5 years ago. And so we've been through our journey together and our relationship has become much stronger, much better in this period. And I think these are really foundational elements that help me be a better founder. So I think they might not be conventional, like, oh, we won 10 awards. I mean, we did win a bunch of awards, but the one I mentioned is important because of what it represents for us, right? It's more of a morale booster than anything else. There's no reward with it. We want startup pitches and everything, but so I think these are the markers for me. And I really kind of look back and say, okay, where was I 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 3 years ago? And have I improved since that time?
So I think it's no secret that you and I both have a little bit of gray hair. Mine is just only in the beard. Do you putting one of your success markers as I'm still excited to work on this problem every single day. And the fact that you and your wife could be co-founders and still, and you said become tighter, is that because of your maturity? I mean, do you think that would have been the same if you were 25 years old doing this?
That's a great question. And just to clarify, she's not the co-founder in this business. She was a
Oh, I
co-founder in
understand.
the last business. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, actually, probably part of the safety, the comfort of us came that we co-founded, ran and operated a company, and then we knew when to get out. That's a big, important part. But I think it is I think I think we've made great choices in our life, and I have no regrets about how they've turned out. I definitely think that maturity is not something inherent in a factor of just completing the time markers, but I think it's the doing of things that you can look back on, say, okay, I've done this before. It's familiar and I can do it better the next time, whatever it is. Having a kid late is very atypical in our culture. Typically people are, out of the wedding door and boom, they've got a kid, right? Like 2 years in, they're already maybe two kids. We waited like 13 years before having a child. And being a father and a founder of a company around the same time, I feel like the maturity as a person that I've acquired has really allowed me to be much more level headed and more focused. Resilience has not changed, but I think those two characteristics in the beginning, they're really important because I agree the maturity is definitely an index that it cannot be underscored at all.
And now you mentioned that you're a father and a founder, right? That leads me to I've written a fair amount about this topic because I have a 12-year-old son.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things I experienced was having a child made me a much better founder because it caused me to be more focused. It caused me
Yeah.
to be more conscious of my time and what problems I was working on. Obviously, as you know, and anybody who listens who's a parent knows that it's the most wonderful thing in the world, but it can also be trying at times, right? That your patience and the way you communicate and getting them to put their socks on in the morning. And
Trying to do
so
a Zoom call without interruption.
there you go. And it's funny how when the phone rings, they always need something from you, right? They come over and then it's kind of like magnet actually. But so you know you had your child at 38, 39, something like
39.
that.
Yeah.
39,
Yeah.
yeah. So very similar to me. Is your child old enough to understand what it is that you do at this point, or is it just too
Y-
early?
You know, he knows the name of the company. He knows the logo. He knows how to pronounce it. He knows what work looks like. He thinks that work for me is like being on a call with a bunch of people all the time, which, for the most part, it can't be. What he knows that I work in the food industry. He doesn't necessarily understand what an industry is, but he knows that I deal with something to do with restaurants and food. And he knows that every time we go out to eat, which is much to the dismay of my wife, I will always, without fail, ask them what system they're using there as an opportunity to business
And
develop.
leave a business card.
Yeah, exactly. My wife hates it every time, and my son is always very intrigued. He's going to turn 5 in October, but he's
But you
very
know what?
perceptive.
I'm gonna not be very popular with your wife now because I'm gonna
That's okay.
suggest you give the business card to your kid and have
Yeah,
him walk up to the restaurant owner or the whomever is seating you and saying,
I
"Would you
like this.
please help my daddy's business succeed?"
I love this. That's, from a father and an entrepreneur to
Yeah,
another. I will accept that. I will take the consequences that come with
yeah.
it.
And
Who says no
and
to a
please,
kid?
you'll have to call and let me know when you close the first
I
deal that
will.
your son has actually done. But I'm asking about this because one thing that I thought about after I became a father was the legacy,
Yeah,
right? I was so at the time the businesses that I had when I had him were helping companies sell more stuff, right? So I had
yeah,
Coca-Cola and American Express and United Airlines and all sorts of companies like that as clients. And honestly, I was like, do I want to be do I want my son to look at his dad and say, my dad helped Coca-Cola sell more soda?
yeah,
And so I had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment. I'm not religious, and if you are
yeah.
anybody that's
I've had one too, by the way. A few. I'm not even Christian, but it's a
yeah.
good.
I mean, it's like, do I really want to do that? So I started thinking about, what is it that I'm doing? Because we have a choice. People like you and me have a lot of choices in the sense that we're not really good at being employees anymore, right? So we have to start something ourselves. So I thought about what am I going to do that will my son can point to in the future and saying, you know what, daddy was part of getting people to eat healthier or
Yeah.
mental health, which is what I mostly work with, right? Have you had those thoughts yet or not? Or
So I'm a bit of a romantic. I'm a bit nostalgic. I think a lot about my childhood and kind of really reflect on how that's turning out for me as a father and for my son as well. And not in a way to kind of let's plan, what the outcome needs to be. It's really just trying to be a good dad, right? And being a dad that's responsible, that's there when I need to be. and also, routine oriented, right? So my kid knows when to expect me, when not to expect me, because these are also important. And these are, by the way, characteristics my wife has infused in me. I was very disorganized before that. Suffice to say, I'm a diamond in the rough, if it's okay to say that.
It
Uh,
is.
but I think, really kind of thinking about how to kind of transcend what I'm doing and how to be able to sort of, so if the question is about creating legacy, that's something my son can carry on down the road. I wondered, my dad and I were about the same age apart. He was about 47 when he had me, and, he's 92 now and, still living strong, but he had a business for a while. And I was 12 when he shut the business down. I knew what he did. I used to go to his office every day and, play video games on the computer at the time. It was the 80s and 90s, but, and he was very advanced for what he was doing at the time, a fighter pilot before that. So very analog, career to a very like,
Mhm.
anyway, but I wasn't, the gap between when the company shut down to when I started working was just too wide for me to really kind of inherit anything. With my son, I think I'll probably, if I don't exit from this company at some point in a good way or otherwise, I probably have built another few companies in the meantime, right? But what I want to do, I think instead is really kind of inculcate this culture and ideology in my son. Kind of like I think what you're sort of really alluding to is the idea of thinking really freely and thinking really enterprising about enterprising opportunities in ways and that are non-conventional, right? So for example, in North America, it's very common for kids to learn how to sell lemonade with the lemonade stand outside on the side, right? Sure, it happens everywhere, but it's very popularized because of Hollywood. And just the idea of learning how to be able to to give something in exchange for something, that idea of currency is something we started to introduce to help him understand money and relationship with money and the expense of things. Can't just point at something and expect it's just going to appear. Santa's not going to come and do that. But I think just trying to figure out how to be able to sort of help him understand the importance of why we work and what
Yeah.
we're trying to do, whether it's for our company, whether it's for ourselves, and just being able to understand that the importance of all of this is not because we make money so that we can do the things we want to, but we do the things we want to, and we'll make money on the process, but we'll also add value and help other people in that process. I think it's really just about good values, right? And passing those on.
Yeah. And I
I probably butchered your question completely, but
no, you didn't, and a good answer is incumbent upon the questioner, right? So I should have been clearer. But you mentioned some things that got me thinking because but we're going to talk a little bit more about our kids, and it just
okay.
happens with this podcast that we end up
Yeah.
in random places. But teaching our children the value of money, right, in a world where increasingly now you live in Dubai. I don't know which part of Dubai you live in, but when you live up where I live in Copenhagen, you think of Dubai as excessive wealth and everybody drives a
Yeah.
Lamborghini, right?
That's
Which
pretty
I'm
much
sure is
what
not
it
true.
is. Where I live, it's exactly like that. The Palm
All right.
Jumeirah.
Well, I'm doing something wrong then. But my son sees this, right? He sees that on
Yeah.
different social media. And so what I try to talk to him about when it comes to understanding the value of money is to say, like you did, there is an exchange of some sort. You have to create something that somebody finds valuable. But what
Correct.
that is has changed, right? It used to be that you would farm the land, pull up the potatoes if you're in my regions, and sell those potatoes, and somebody would find that valuable. But today, you can make money, literally, on sharing information that you have in your head, and somebody might find that valuable, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to say, value can come from many things, but the thing that matters, and this is my punchline, is that you, my dear son, enjoy doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you can make money as a carpenter or as a
Yeah.
banker or as a TikTok influencer or whatever. There's going to be, when he grows, in 6 years, when he turns 18 and sort of needs to really start making his own money, who knows what he'll be able to make money on. So my conversation with him was around saying, as long as you, like Zohare, wake up, enjoy going to work, are energized about what you do, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Second subsection, and please don't hurt anybody else in the process, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Please.
so if he grows up to be an arms dealer, I'm not sure I would be proud, but beyond that, he can pretty much do whatever he wants.
Yeah. No, I hear you. it's hard, right? I think we make it harder for ourselves. We're already under a lot of pressure from a lot of people, a lot of expectations, but kids, just something that we might try too hard, and sometimes things are just going to turn out. We just have to really kind of focus on the good value system, which you just said. And I
Yeah.
think really it's just an enabling environment. And hopefully they won't deal arms.
We've spent a fair amount of time talking about our kids, and I appreciate that. But we are getting
Yeah.
to the point where we have to wrap up, and I might
Yeah.
ask you back for another episode because we're not really getting into all the exciting things that we had in our pre-chat. I want to close off by talking a little bit about one of the things that you've done, as I understand it, very successfully. You've essentially
Okay.
retained 98% of your team
Yeah.
throughout this journey.
Yeah.
And I say that's remarkable because of you're in a SaaS, B2B SaaS business. You're in a market where talent is not plentiful. So
Yeah.
people are probably going to be, asked to come join your competitors or join other companies. How have you done that? How have you retained such a high number of your team?
And, just to kind of give you back a kicker, the numbers maybe changed a bit, maybe more 96% now, but
Oh, that's
it's very
terrible.
marginal. Yeah, it's absolutely catastrophic. I'm sorry. um, I also want to add the fact that as a tech company trying to build at an early stage and reliant still very heavily on, external capital when revenue is not possible, raising money in 2023 was like, trying to drive, a snowmobile in a sandstorm with no goggles on. And I think, that's why I started by saying we haven't really kind of conquered much, right? I think when you think of hey, we're incrementally moving, but I think the real trick has been when we saw the adversity of what building a company and operating at a time when you have very scarce resources, financially and otherwise, we had two choices. We could either be the kind of people that just go in hoping for the best and just keep people informed with what is absolutely essential and nothing more, or open up, completely become transparent, engage everybody at every level of the organization with as much relevant information as possible without creating any panic or fear, but letting them know that, look, things are going to be tough. They've been tough as a startup, but they're going to get really tough because you might have days when we might not be able to pay you a salary, where you might have a landlord coming banging down your door and threatening to kick you out. Your family member might be sick and you have a deliverable that just cannot be excused. Like, there are going to be some complexities that we're not going to be able to necessarily have a playbook to navigate around. So I want you to know that, we're going to go through this together and we're going to deal with it together. And whatever we need to do, we'll figure a way out together. And ultimately, I think that was probably the single biggest, say, sort of factor in keeping the people. Our team has grown with us. Yesterday, we announced three of our earliest employees who've been with us for 2.5 years in the company. And because the beginning of the company was just me and my co-founder and a couple of ragtag people, right? But we're now like over 30 people. So the team surged over the last year and a half. And most of the retention I'm talking about is like people who've been with us for at least more than a year, right? Not in a short lifespan of 3+ years is pretty good. And the biggest reason was because we just kind of opened up and said, look, we're not going to hide anything from you. We're going to tell you how things are going. If we're running out of money, we'll give you enough time that if you need to jump ship and go and do something else, we'll give you the respect and do that so that we don't just show up one day. Because I've had bosses do that to me in the past and be like, we ran out of money a week ago. Sorry, we're not going to make salary this month, right? It's like, what? I have a rent check coming up. I've got like school kids that I need to, fees that I need to pay, right? So while those things can't be moved, but at least you're prepared. And then if there's things that we need to do around that, and I think that's what it is. So we've been through the worst of it together. And I think that we'll really, really relish the best of it together. And I think if you don't build good team culture, and culture is not nice laptops and team lunches and, BS like that. Honestly, I think that's really kind of fairy dust and sprinkles. But the real stuff that matters is be getting down at a human level and basically telling people, look, when we say we're a flat organization, it definitely means there's no sir, ma'am, or anything like that. But more importantly, it means that if I've done something wrong, you can call me out on it. And it also means that when we're winning together. But if we're losing, we're also losing together. We're not going to do things in isolation. And I think if there's one thing that I found even today, a lot of founders who ask me the same question, like, how have you held on to your team, even with like, bare bones or fumes in your bank account? It's because of this. It's because I've actually encouraged people to leave the company with 3 months notice and will pay them for that time. And they've refused to do that. They've dug their heels in deep. And it's a very bizarre kind of almost like reverse psychology that you don't intend to work, but it does because there's just so much conviction.
Mhm.
And that's something you can never pay for with anything except for really just truly connecting with people at a human level, which
And
I
I
think
think
really ties into the theme of your podcast,
I
the whole
think
human.
I think on that note, we'll have to end it here. It was wonderful to speak with you again, Zohare. Thanks for joining me on the show.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, Peter, for having me, and talk to you soon.
And for everybody listening or watching this was another episode of the Whole Human Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Sorgenfrei. If you have any founder CEOs that I should talk to or any topics that you want me to cover, please let me know in the notes where you're listening or watching this, or find me online. That should be pretty easy. And I'd be happy to record an episode just about the topics that you care the most about. Thank you so much.